Pope Francis has been chosen as Time magazine's Person of the Year. Time said the Catholic Church's new leader has changed the perception of the 2,000-year-old institution in an extraordinary way in a short time.
Just changing the mission of the Church to focus on poverty and how to alleviate it. And he has really inspired a lot of people in this very short period of time to follow his lead.
Since taking over at the Vatican, the Pope has urged the Catholic Church to emphasize compassion over condemnation, dealing with touchy topics like abortion, gays, and contraception.
So, as a gay Jew, I actually think that's a really great decision. I think he's said a lot of really important things, and he's making important stands and trying to do better for the world, and I think it's a really exciting and good choice.
The Pope beat out NSA leaker Edward Snowden for the distinction, which the news magazine has been bestowing each year since 1927. Jones said both had characteristics that met the criteria for the designation.
The choices, our slate for Person of the Year this year, really reflect the way that people can gain influence in the world today. It can often be very sudden, and often the people who are influential are people who are disrupting things. They're doing things differently.
Other top contenders for Person of the Year included Texas Senator Ted Cruz, Syrian leader Bashar Assad, President Obama, and Miley Cyrus.
World lead ever since Jorge Mario Bergoglio became Pope Francis back in March. He's been on a mission to engage those who had perhaps given up on the church. Washing and kissing the feet of inmates of a juvenile detention center, embracing a severely disfigured man in St. Peter's Square, and stirring up controversy about how much he's open to change. He told reporters back in July that if someone is gay and he searches for the Lord and has goodwill, who am I to judge? Those sort of efforts have propelled Pope Francis to be named Time magazine's Person of the Year, announced today. The last time a pope was on this cover was when John Paul II took the title in 1994. Michael Crowley, Time's deputy Washington bureau chief, tells us how the Pope landed the cover, and we should mention, of course, Time magazine is part of our Time Warner family. So, Michael, thanks for being here. The Vatican has issued a response to your decision, saying, quote, "It is pleasing to the Pope that this service should appeal and give hope to women and men." So you've pleased the Pope. Why pick the Pope?
Well, this Pope is a sensation. People love this Pope. And, you know, he didn't just come into the job and fill the other guy's seat and keep it warm and stay the course. He hasn't changed doctrine, but he's changed the tone in dramatic and surprising ways. He has shown a kind of accessibility and humility that has surprised people. And I think his message, again, a tonal thing, has caused people to listen again to the Church's doctrine, particularly after a period when the Church has had some really bad moments, some really bad PR, some big scandals, and people are tuning back in and they're hearing surprising things, and they love him.
So, look, I'm not going to begrudge the Pope, but what is Person of the Year supposed to be? Isn't it supposed to be for the person who influenced the events of the world the most that year? Isn't that what it is?
It's the person who has broad influence, who is consequential, who is a newsmaker. There's not a scientific formula to explain it. But
see, here's my thing about the Person of the Year. And look, I understand it. You got to sell magazines. But, I mean, I think just empirically looking at the year, Bashar al-Assad or Edward Snowden changed events more tangibly than the Pope has done in his short time as the head of the Vatican. And you guys don't pick bad guys. You haven't done it since 1979 when you picked the Ayatollah Khomeini. When you picked Giuliani in 2001 instead of bin Laden, I understood the decision. But bin Laden changed the world more in 2001 than Giuliani. Now, no one's going to buy a magazine with bin Laden on the cover. Don't you think that this is about marketing? I mean, certainly you can sell magazines a lot easier with the Pope's cover, face on the cover, than Bashar al-Assad's.
Look, Jake, there are 1.2 billion Catholics in the world.
Marketing, my point.
About twice as many Christians.
But
so when you talk about influence, you talk about the number of lives that someone has touched. This guy has enormous reach. He's enormously influential and consequential. Everyone you mentioned and all of our runner-ups, there's a winner and 4 runner-ups who are profiled in the magazine. We're also enormously consequential. It's not an easy decision. It wouldn't be fun if it was an easy decision. You know, part of the fun for us is the debate going into making a decision, and the debate that we're having now that's happening on Twitter and online where people are saying, no, it should have been Snowden, it should have been Assad. This is the decision that we came down with, but you can make strong cases for the others. It's not a vote against anyone else.
You have this short list of 10 people, and Miley Cyrus was on the short list. Can you explain? Can you justify that?
I mean, can you name 10 people you talked about more than Miley Cyrus, or that we sort of culturally in America talked about more than Miley Cyrus this year? I mean, you can come up with different lists. She would definitely be high on any list. You may not agree with the reasons, but she's someone who was debated from everywhere from kind of teenage magazines and TV shows to the pages of the New York Times. What does she mean? What does she represent in our culture?
How do you come up with the top? She's obviously a big deal. I don't know if she's top 10, but how do you come up with the top 10 list? Is that just kind of random? The same way you?
Well, not random, but there's no science behind this for the top 10 list, for the top 5, or for the final choice. There's no algorithm. There's no perfect answer. We solicit huge amounts of feedback, both from within Time, all of our correspondents, both domestically and abroad, former People of the Year, our Time 100 list. We have an online poll, but ultimately it's the judgment of the senior editors and the final call of Nancy Gibbs, the managing editor.
Person of the Year version of it has been around since the 1927 issue with Charles Lindbergh. Let's put up the winners of the last 5 years just to get some perspective before we say goodbye to you. 2012, President Obama. 2011, The Protester. 2010, Mark Zuckerberg. 2009, Ben Bernanke. 2008, Barack Obama. I just wonder, like, if you think as we get closer to the 2027 issue, the 100 years, if constantly picking people that everybody likes and everybody will buy a magazine will.
I challenge that everybody likes all those people. President Obama, Ben Bernanke, they have big critics.
That's fair enough, but more mainstream choices. But I got to go. Thank you very much, Michael.
What was it about the Pope that ended up?
Well, just on the list that you just read, I will say the connective tissue is these people are all disruptors, right? And, Snowden and the Pope, we didn't even know these people 2 years ago, which is very unusual for a person of the year. The Pope's, just the way he's come in and reached out. This is somebody who cold calls people in distress, who washes the feet of a Muslim woman, who agrees to baptize the baby of a divorced woman whose married lover wanted her to abort the child. These are incredible gestures and symbols, and they really matter.
I want to talk about Snowden in a second, but you talked about the fact that we didn't know who either of these two men were 2 years ago. You don't know that you're going to be Pope. Right. There's no certainty at any level. His rollout, his introduction, his self-introduction to the world, I don't think I've ever seen anything like it.
No, absolutely. And there's such a surge of popularity and just kind of popular support for this Pope. By the way, this Pope is the first Pope, non-European Pope, in 1,200 years, which is very interesting because the Catholic faith is growing most rapidly in places like Latin America and in parts of the non-Western world. So he really represents a kind of globalism, too, that's very new.
And he's seen as re-energizing the faithful, bringing in younger people to the church, obviously.
And in the Impact segment tonight, Time Magazine has selected as Person of the Year, and thank God it's not Miley Cyrus. Actually, God may be involved with the decision, as Pope Francis is the magazine's choice. Pontiff is 76 years old, native of Argentina, has made some conciliatory statements about social issues. He's also a champion of the poor. And joining us now from Madison, Wisconsin to react, Dan Barker, an atheist and co-president of the Freedom From Religion Foundation. So what do you think about that choice?
Well, first of all, happy winter solstice, Bill. I think the current Pope is popular. I think part of the reason for it is that he's, ironically, appears to be less Catholic than his predecessors. Most Catholics in America, for example, 90% of Catholics in America disagree with the Vatican on social issues and birth control. And it looks like the appearance is that this Pope is more concerned about the real world, this world, than puffing up the glory of the Church with its medieval principles of fighting human progress. So,
all right. Have you got that out of your system now, Mr. Barker? Have you got that out of your system? Have you got it out?
Not quite.
All right, well,
if you give me a couple more minutes,
you can
I'll
do
go
that
on
on somebody. You can do that on somebody else's dime. Let's just go back to Time Magazine. So you don't object to the choice?
No, I think he is popular. He has said some things which appear more liberal than the Church. And I think that's part of the popularity.
Okay.
Most
so
Americans are in touch with the real world.
Your group isn't going to denounce Time Magazine for promoting a religious icon. Because Some will. I mean, some atheists will attack and say that, you know, Time Magazine, which is a liberal magazine, pretty secular, they shouldn't be promoting this, because they are really promoting Pope Francis. They're promoting his philosophy. Maybe that's not fair, because Time Magazine has had some people of the year who have not been good. But by giving him exposure, Pope Francis, more people will read about him and his philosophy of life. And I thought that maybe you would object to that.
Well, I'm not saying he's a good man. I think he's window dressing. If he's still endorsing the archaic principles and
so then you are mad at Time Magazine,
the Catholic Church.
So you are mad.
I'm not mad at Time Magazine.
No.
No, we're not. Time Magazine is a private magazine. We only go after the government when the government promotes religion. We think Time Magazine is within its rights to acknowledge the fact that this Pope
certainly
appears
they're
to
within
be
its
nicer.
rights, but you can either like the choice or not like the choice. And I'm getting mixed signals. Do you like the choice or not like the choice?
It makes no difference to us.
All right, so
you know, we wouldn't have picked the Pope as the man of the year.
You're agnostic about the choice, then.
Well, of course, but
how about this one?
The point I'm trying to make is that I think his popularity is due to the fact that he's more liberal than the Church. I think that's a good sign
to
for
Time
society.
Magazine. Sure. I mean, he's certainly more inclusive than some of the other church leaders have been. In Times Square, go from Time Magazine to Times Square, they put up a very obnoxious, in my opinion, ad. Who needs Christ during Christmas? This was not Mr. Barker's group, by the way. Mr. Barker's group did not this. This was another atheist group. So nobody needs Christ in Christmas. This is, you know, you're walking through Times Square, this is what you see. And you react to that how?
Well, because December is not owned by Christians. Nobody thinks Jesus was born in December, if he was born at all.
Well, I have that in my book.
This is a season that we are all celebrating.
I have that. I'm sure you've read Killing Jesus. I have that in my book. He was born probably in late April.
It's on my list. While shepherds watch their flocks at night. So your book is on my list down there somewhere, Bill. But December is the month where we're celebrating the real reason for the season, and we're happy to share it with Christians. That is the birth of the sun, S-U-N, not the S-O-N. The winter solstice, the Roman Saturn. Exactly, the shortest day of sunlight in the northern hemisphere. Yeah. The Romans celebrated it with the Saturnalia. Yeah. We atheists and agnostics celebrate this time of year, and we're happy to invite you, Bill, to share this season.
If
Christians
the sun's having a birthday,
the season from the pagans.
I just wouldn't know what to get it. But look, we don't ask you to believe in Christmas. Nobody's asking you, Mr. Barker, to do that. But to attack it in Times Square, is that really is that a nice thing to do to celebrate winter solstice? Is that nice?
Winter solstice is a natural holiday. It's the reason for the season.
Is it nice to put up the billboard, Mr. Barker?
We put up our own billboard.
Okay.
In Times Square just last month.
I'll put you down as being agnostic. I'll put you down as being agnostic on the naughty or nice question. Hey, Mr. Barker, you have a blast for the son's birthday, and we appreciate you appearing.